This is Assassin's Creed Unity. So yeah, when I thought about games to revisit on Xbox One X, which is what I'm playing on, Assassin's Creed Unity was one of the first that came to mind. Now this was one of the, I want to say, groundbreaking sort of next-gen titles in terms of what they were aiming to achieve with the game, in terms of population and scale and really an open world next generation Assassin's Creed title. Now, obviously this one was buggy. It was broken. It wasn't the best effort, and their push for technology really did sort of ruin the experience. Now, this isn't Xbox One X enhanced. I am playing it on that console. The game is 900p at 30 FPS, but on the base hardware, it actually runs horribly. There's points where, the audio drops in and out, and yeah, it's just not a great time at all. But here on the Xbox One X, we actually get something that runs decently. It still has a lot of bugs and problems because of just the way it launched and the fact that it was never enhanced for the newer console. But the experience doesn't have the same sort of problems where the audio cuts out, and it doesn't have the rendering issues with the crowds, and the visuals aren't quite as bad. You'll notice it's actually very smooth. There's not a lot of problems. The crowd's massive. And I guess it really just took a little bit more of a boost to actually get something that works well. Now you're still noticing in the distance there's a lot of popping with the characters and the crowds. And that's just kind of due to how this was set up to run on the original console. And some of the efforts they made to sort of make it playable. You're going to notice a lot more popping as I run a little bit faster through this world in the distance, and that's why I'm kind of doing it. As far as the crowds and some of the items and the textures and such are going to load in as I'm running through it. And now just imagine that, but take that as basically, what was available on the start of the generation, and it was a really bad time. It was an incredibly disappointing game for me because I wasn't too into the Creed games, but I thought I'd give this one a whirl because there weren't too many, games available at the time. And yeah, I liked the story. I really thought Arno was somewhat of an interesting character. He's a native Frenchman, and it's about him and his sort of romance with Elise and how the two kind of interact and work, across France in order to deal with certain problems. Obviously, there's prominent figures, and the whole revolution side of things I thought was really interesting because I do love this particular time period. I love what they've done with the crowds. I gotta give it to them. I know we're not gonna get crowds like this ever again because of, how things turned out. But look at how dynamic it is. Look at all the people in here cheering, moving around. And then you've got people carrying others. There's some that are fighting. There's some that are holding things. There's some other jobs. It's, this kind of density is very impressive. This feels like, if they could actually get this running correctly, a true depiction of the time and a true sort of realistic gathering of people in a mob. Because usually games, they just can't do that. But look at the density. Look how far it reaches. It's very, very impressive. It just wasn't at a place. We didn't have the power beforehand to actually properly do this. Going back to the story, he basically, some of the details happen. I won't spoil anything. He becomes an assassin like you're kind of seeing, and then he goes and he has all these missions, and there's a long story, and I kind of did things cheaply. I'd run in and assassinate somebody, and then I'd just fuck off. I'd do missions in seconds, which was great. They also did a lot of advancements to this game, as far as the movement system, the way parkour and everything like that works, and it was a lot smoother. I didn't think it was quite perfect, but it was still pretty good. It wasn't bad. And this is a very large environment and city that you can kind of move through. Everything like that. Yeah, very impressive location. Okay, so yeah, this is the general map. It's actually kind of large. I wasn't sure if I was in the DLC world for a sec, because you gotta keep in mind it has been a while. There was the Dead Kings, which was sort of an expansion to the main content and really added a fair bit. Now, this one was had some controversy around it too. because it was a parody title. They said it was so there wouldn't be any debates about quality and stuff. So it actually runs at 900p on all the console platforms, which is interesting. But I also think that's more of a general limitation for the type of game this is. Eagle Vision. Nice, eh? You get what I'm saying. It was a very interesting title. I really did think this one had a lot of potential. I loved the setting of France and where it is in the time period it took place, and you know, the futuristic stuff was minimal, which was great because nobody ever seems to like that. Actually, I didn't mind the idea of the future stuff or the present time in the Creed games. I don't think they ever really do it correctly. But yeah, it was sort of really disappointing. It was good in the sense that I liked the setting and everything, and I felt the story was alright, but it was just bad in terms of how it played and like the really poor performance, because it had the design of a true next-gen title. It just didn't have the performance to be able to do that, which is disappointing. Hello. Ha ha ha. Look at that little fire thing going on. It's just amazing little details that they've done in this to really capture that time period well. Hello, gentlemen. No, thank you. And there's a lot of depth in what you could do, and the various abilities and everything that you could work between, the character customization with your skills and the ranged items, and what you could unlock. And you can gather food, because your food, you could gather currency by kind of owning places, such as like a food place, I think it was a bar or a theater you owned at one point. There's lots of different weapons and equipments that you could gather and unlock. I think I got a pretty good one, the Sword of Eden. Played this quite a bit back in the day, but it's been quite a long time. All these different rifles, and you get the idea of it. There was a lot of depth to this. And there was boosts, and I guess you could be a part of groups too, which was neat. Like I think it was brotherhoods and whatever. It's been years, so just coming back into this after a long time. I actually just downloaded this again. It was quite large actually, so that I could show it off here, because I deleted it assuming it would be the last time I would ever play it after the last time I did a write-up on the performance of the 1X, going back and actually improving older games like this one. And I think this is greatly improved on the 1X. I'm pleasantly surprised with the quality of it, and it's much more of a playable game than it ever was. Huzzah! Nice finisher. And then there was the cooperative element. You could play with a group of 4 online and do kind of modes. To me, it was sort of a lie in that regard. And I mean that in the sense that from what I was sold on this game was the fact that it was going to be like a cooperative game, like the entire Creed adventure. But it was just like a series of really short online heists that you could do in a few minutes. And it was neat. I like the idea of it. But, yeah. Huge disappointment overall. And I really liked the multiplayer from the other Creed games. It was some of my favorite stuff. Like I played or bought, I think it was Black Flag, just for the multiplayer to play with friends, because I thought it was so interesting. Just what you could do and like the setup of it, and it was very interesting to me, and I liked that part of it. And this one kind of gutted that, and it went, how do you get down there? And it went kind of simple with things in regards to playing with others, so I would like them to actually try to do something more cooperative focused in the future, as I think that's, the potential is there to actually do a really good job on it. What do we get? I don't know. Something cool. There's a lot of depth to the city too. It wasn't just, streets that you run down. There was catacombs and creepy areas and authentic places and areas of discovery, and they really, I think, nailed the architecture and the design of the general times, getting that really depressing sort of, destruction and fire and chaos that really was the time period. And the suits you get are pretty cool in this one. I definitely like those. Hey guys, I'm just gonna run in here. Alarm bell in this area? Oh no. But yeah, like typical Creed games, they've got like outposts that you can assassinate people in. You can play it really stealthily if you'd like. Again, my method was like just run in there, eliminate people, and then leave, and that worked really well for me. I love the sense of verticality in this one. I thought it was kind of I remember this being a big issue I had. The kind of bullshit was that you get like really accurately shot off of buildings by people by these muskets that would have, you know, no chance in hell of causing that kind of damage. But oh yeah, and the windows. I remember the windows being a little bit difficult to kind of enter at times. You get so frustrated about things in this. Good old eagle vision. But yeah, it's a neat game. I still think it's fun, and maybe someday in the far future we'll get some sort of collection with it, and it'll be, you know, the proper version of the game, and we'll be able to enjoy the story in a way that, you know, people will go, oh, okay, I get what they were going with here, and I really appreciate the effort. Because I mean, look at this, even this area. There's people sitting down and interacting. I know I'm really focused on the graphics, but you've probably got an idea of how the game plays and everything like that. You're just wanting to see how it's sort of changed or improved just by putting it in another console. Like, again, they've done nothing to this after launch, and you're already seeing a much more stable environment, a better looking environment, and a game that's a lot more enjoyable because of that. And I think it's perhaps worth checking out at this point if you have access to the 1X. And I don't think it can really get better than this unless they go in and actually touch it up, because this one's probably giving it a, you know, a stable performance, which is nice. And this one was a very interesting year. This was when this was a gap year, so they sort of switched over from doing multi-platform stuff. There wasn't like a Creed on 360 and a Creed on 1, you know, the same version of it. They did two separate ones. So they did one that lagged behind, which was Rogue, and this was Unity, which was just for the new consoles. And the two stories actually combine to a degree. There's a very interesting sort of twist that I won't spoil of how the two are connected, and I think they really did an interesting job with that. The real shame is that, you know, Rogue is the one that got the update, whereas this one was just sort of left hanging, you know, because Rogue got a whole remaster and everything like that. Hello, gentlemen. Nothing to see here. It's gonna open this. Oh, I forgot the lockpicks. How does this work? Oh, crap. Oh, hello. Nobody saw anything, right? Oh, I guess I'll fight you guys. I kind of like the combat in this game. I thought it was interesting. It wasn't too dynamic. It was pretty quick. There was like a whole parry and a whole dodge system, which was interesting. Hello. And then, of course, the guns being put into the middle, which was neat. And your little side abilities. I mean, obviously it's a Creed game, right? So they got all these different things. And I like the dynamic styles too, the stances, how you interact. People wouldn't always die, they'd kind of be injured too. And yeah, again, it was just crap. I shouldn't have broke that. It was just the potential of it was there, and they sort of just left it alone and tried to forget about it. Which is fair, because I mean, you know, they got a lot of bad rep in the series for this one, and then from there it was sort of a redemption with Syndicate, but I still don't think that one quite did quite as well, because they did take that time off. But we're back to really good Creed now at this point with Origins and then Odyssey on the horizon, which does look really good. I would love them to revisit this title in the future, though. Again, maybe next gen we'll see a package where it'll be you know, the Creed games of this generation put together with slight touches. You don't really have to do a lot, you know, just up the resolution, maybe give us a frame rate increase if that's possible and doesn't affect things. Throwing books under the fire. And I think it would be really good. I like the style of it. I still think it's a beautiful game. It looks really good. The addition of HDR might be a nice touch to kind of give it more that lifelike. Oh, look at these two. That lifelike glow to the haze and everything in this one, because it did have a really atmospheric setting to it, with it being that that period in France. So look at these guys. Ooh. But I mean, like, I'm blown away by the crowds, and the crowds in the new ones, they're all right, but they're not really like this. These crowds are so dynamic, and they're living lives. Like they're pulling a body over there and putting it onto a carriage, and then these two are like kind of like lovers, and then back there's other people. Like, I think that guy is getting with maybe a prostitute there. It's on the left-hand side. That guy's knocking on a door, and they're in a shouting match. It's it's sort of a wild thing to see. And I mean, there were other bugs and other problems, and this wasn't like the greatest experience. I was kind of frustrated with it by the end, but you know, I definitely suggest it if you have access to the better platform to give it a try. You might like the story a bit, and you might like the world and the characters within it. You might want to see, you know, how it tied into the rest of the Assassin's Creed universe. Anyways, so that was Unity. I don't have a whole lot to talk about this one because I don't really have any missions to go back and do, or don't really care to. It was a neat package. You know, it had the single player that was expansive, tons of hours of gameplay in the campaign. Then there was the cooperative options, not very extensive, but something you could play with your friends for a period of time if you, you know, wanted to. Crap. Oh, I'm gonna die. Oh no. You do have abilities and everything like that. I'm just not using them. Just walking around and, you know, sort of taking in the sight of it. And that nice mix between reality and this being some sort of like program as the world like shatters into data, and then you spawn back in it, and there was restrictions on areas too depending on what you did. But yeah, that's Assassin's Creed Unity. It runs a lot better, but still the issues remain as you see the load in and the pop in. So if you don't run too fast, that actually runs pretty well. But yeah, interesting game.